Board games. We might be talking about how we go about pitching board games, but we're not gonna shout. We will talk about how we got meetings. For me, it is about these feelings that these are people that I knew already. That's how it happens. You can't reproduce it exactly. We will talk about how there's a lot of chance and luck, and you don't be feeling like you can't get any meetings, therefore you suck. Please don't think that. Board games and having meetings is what I'm talking about. Board games and having meetings, I'm not gonna shout. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. 10 a.m. is UK time. SE Beats and Board Game Bladder. Today we're talking about arranging meetings for Essen or just in general, and featuring lovely friend Jessica Metheringham. Hello, Jess.
Hello, hi.
And I hope that you're well. And today's topic, I basically said, hey, this is what I'm doing, and I've basically stopped applying to meetings because if there's someone that I really wanted to meet, I should have sent them an email many weeks ago. And of course, if something comes up, then seize that opportunity. But you said, oh, that sounds like fun. I'd be interested to chat about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'd like to start this off by saying that this is one of the things that I personally find hardest. Thinking about meetings and arranging them. When I'm there in a meeting and I've done several, pitches, then, I feel perfectly in control, no problem with that. But it's the arranging it, and I never quite know if I'm going about it the right way. And, different people seem to have different opinions there. And it's just, we all have our strengths and we all have our things that we could do with strengthening a bit more. And this is definitely one of those where I think, I could do with thinking more about how I actually arrange meetings, because I haven't done that much of it and I want to do more of it.
But I do want to acknowledge basically all of these are due to pre-existing relationships. And even though I said it jokingly, genuinely, it does take time to build up. And don't think that I'm going to give you like a silver bullet or some magic shortcuts or anything. And
No
hello,
panaceas
Bodhi.
here.
I hope that you are generally well and having a lovely day. Before we get to the main topic, I feel like we want to very quickly talk about, other than arranging the meetings, other recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights. Yesterday, I was honestly just feeling really down for a variety of reasons, and I decided that I was going to take the day off. I said I'm not going to do anything at all productive today, and sometimes there's a bit of guilt, but I do normally work weekend days, so it's like, why should I be? It's like most people don't work 6-7 days a week, and there's ridiculous amount of pressure. But I took the time off. I pretty much stayed in the house all day, I'm going to admit. I read a lot. I read a lot of comics, and some of them were online. I read a couple of articles, spent a tiny bit of time on social media, had a pre-prepared lasagna, and I also had a tinned curry with some peas in it. So that was basically the bulk of what I was generally up to. Also, the recent events, I want to mention this from Alan Paul, and obviously Gibson's Games. Alan was just the developer, but Kingmaker, if that's something that interests you, playing a game that lasts several hours, and it's been shortened. So the previous version might take like 4, even 6 hours, but this one, it's actually now you can get it played within like 2 hours, and so it's a lot more reasonable by modern standards. If you want to play the original rules, they are still in the box, and the map is flippable, so you can play the modern version, which has been redesigned, or the original version, which the only changes are to clarify the rules, if you know what I mean. Because there's a lot of debate online of what exactly Andrew McNeil was meaning by this historical game. And Jay Guard says, "Oh, I've been reading the rules for Kingmaker." And
we have a copy of this. This is one of the ones that we have a copy of it, and this is one of my partner's games. He tends to bring the lengthy historical ones plus things like Hero Quest. He tends to have quite a lot of the things that he played when he was younger, and he absolutely loves it. I've played it a couple of times. And it's fun, but lengthy. Yeah, lengthy is it, isn't it?
And so, yeah, maybe you would prefer Kingmaker. I think, can't remember what it's called. It's basically Kingmaker 2 done in a fancy way. It's called like Kingmaker the Second's Coming or something. Let me.
Just as long as it still has you ability to, to charge in and be all Warwick about it, it's great. I do appreciate something that's got a decent, War of the Roses theme. Oh, and they have bags. How nice. Anyway.
Yes, and lots of quotes, and well, I can't find the thing right now which says exactly what's in the box. But if you want to check that out, It's also something that made me smile. Well, yesterday I found out people are saying nice things behind my back. And also this morning I woke up and someone was saying how they played a game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after some makes noises. And they conclude it's silly, fun, would make a great icebreaker. And I think that's a solid review.
Yeah, I mean, this is the sort of thing that we make games for, for being, there are serious games where you learn a lot of history, but actually there are a lot of games which are just silly and fun, and it's, people wanting to have a good time. So yeah, absolutely. Plus it is a great icebreaker. I've brought it along to last Christmas I brought it along, and and lots of people enjoyed it.
Last Christmas you brought the game. A game about wee whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after noise. This is the name. This year. Anyway, what are some of your recent highlights,
This year it's
Jess? Jess, highlights, achievements, events, and anyone in the comments, if you want to share recent things that you've been excited about, feel free. But Jess.
Ooh. So highlights achieved. Oh, let's go with things like this. So recent highlight. I made a very good soup yesterday. I was very impressed with it. It had a lot of butternut squash in it, butternut squash and carrot, and some red lentils. Very tasty.
Very autumnal.
Oh yeah, it was really nice. Recent achievements. I recently went and did a run for the first time in ages. Because years ago, pre-children years ago, then I used to do a lot of running. But sort of, running to and from work. I would regularly, basically, I would do a half-hour run 6 or 7 times a week. Because I didn't.
That's very impressive.
Which was quite impressive, and I enjoyed it. It was all fairly flat because it was from Tufnell Park to Euston. That was where I was living at the time. I was living in Tufnell Park, and that was, all fairly flat, quite easy, quite straightforward.
So you'd kind of go in your sports gear in something a bit thin that you can maybe go into the showers at work and then change into normal work gear.
Exactly. Yes, it did mean that there was a bit of there was some funny logistics, which was why one of the reasons it wasn't 10 times a week was that, firstly there'd be things I'd do after work occasionally. I'd go out somewhere, but also there'd be times when I'd realize that I had all of my winter coats and my shoes at one of the places and not the other, and so I wouldn't run back. I'd then sort of collect them all and take them back to the other place because they'd all end up in the wrong place. So very inconvenient. But yeah, definitely a bit of achievement.
Congratulations on getting back to that. It can be quite just getting started, and I hope that maybe tomorrow or Friday, like at least, I mean, you don't need to start off and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this loads and loads a week. Twice a week is still a really good number if you can manage
Twice
that.
a week would be good. Yeah, I might do it tomorrow. Tomorrow would be good.
All the best,
other event, one of the other things that happened was that I played Bandito.
My
Bandido.
Helvetic, yeps.
Yes, with my 4-year-old who really enjoyed it and got it. And not only that, he had he'd played with my partner, so he was saying, this is what we did with Daddy, etc. And he got the rules right, and he explained the rules to me, and I
Wow.
was just so impressed. And he was, he wasn't necessarily making the absolute best decision all of the time,
Mm-mm-mm.
but he was making logical decisions. He was making sensible choices, and he knew how it worked. And I was like, this is really good. Then he wanted to play again, and it was like, wow, amazing.
Brilliant.
So
Yeah,
yes,
it's
that
a
was a
really
big
nice game.
highlight.
It's not one that I personally enjoy because I feel like I don't have as much agency as I'm looking for from a game like this. But when you
Mm,
think about the accessibility, it is brilliant because the graphics tell you exactly what you've got
mm,
to do. There's no counting involved. It's not like you've got to score anything.
mm.
It's not as if you are allowed to have 3 exits. It's 0.
Yeah,
0 and lots are numbers that you don't really have to count. Do you know what I mean? If
absolutely.
actually 0 and 1. I mean, because if it's lots, you can't really
Mm,
put that into the rules. You can't say you win
yeah.
when you've got lots. That's silly. But yeah, 0 is like
It
kind of the
works really
simplest
well.
number.
Yeah, it works really well, and the fact that it's just a sort of a purely spatial game, people can understand that really well. People are like, "Oh yes, that one goes there and that one goes there," and that I think is the sort of thing that's more instinct than experience. So
Mm.
people who are naturally quite spatial will really enjoy this, and people who are perhaps less spatially oriented, people who are more verbal, perhaps may not enjoy this.
I guess that there is a propensity for spatial awareness for sure, but I think it's still very much a mathematical thing that you can sort
Mm.
of work out and you can talk around. Like if you actually discuss the things, you can say, okay, that's the best. But that sounds
Yeah.
wonderful.
Anyway, it was
Finding
good.
a game that people can get together with, and it does really make me appreciate that game, just how
Mm,
accessible it is. And
yeah.
I guess that's, shall we call that the brilliant thing of the day?
Yeah,
Accessibility. Brilliant thing.
accessibility is good.
The little thing which is brilliant. I think that's accessibility and literally not having to count because when it's like, oh, there's no more of this, you don't need to count that. You're just like, oh, is there some? Oh, no, there's nothing. We win. There's only this one and this one. You don't need to know that there's even 2.
Mm,
You don't even need to be able to count up to 2. You just need to know there's this one and this one. So you've still not
yeah.
won. And then when one of them, well, there's still this one. And yeah, I think that actually I'm going to, because I'm sure I've talked about accessibility before, I'm going to just focus on getting rid of maths, which I
Mhm.
think is a wonderful thing when it's just, yeah, make your numbers 0 or some number, it doesn't matter how much, or even don't have numbers at all. Like, there's something wonderful about that. And I would, thinking about it, I would really be honored if I had designed something like Bandito or Bandita, the follow-up, which is exactly the
Ah.
same, but with different graphics.
Excellent. Something which is accessible, there's a real benefit to something being accessible,
Mm,
and I like your idea about, the fact that, that having 0 versus, 1 or more is a really clear distinction. And I think it's things which are kind of instinctive as well. So it's
mm,
not
mm.
necessarily just what's accessible, but what makes sense. Where are the clear distinctions? And I think, there are a lot of games where it's like, oh, obviously you do that, and that's really valuable.
Because I mean, the whole okay, the edges need to match, whether it's Carcassonne or Bandido, that's intuitive. People naturally want to do that. And actually, it would be less intuitive if you could kind of mismatch edges, right? And
Yeah,
saying, "Oh,
exactly,
there's a
that
bunch
wouldn't
of
make
things, you need to
sense.
close them." It makes sense within the theme. Okay, you need to try and trap this person and close them all off and stop them. So there's something, yeah, lovely here. Um, let's get to the main topic, I guess. And oh, Jess's internet might be breaking up, but as always, if you have any comments, questions, please feel free to get them in. Do follow.
Back.
But
Sorry.
no worries. Did you press the wrong button, or is your internet on the fritz?
No, I think the internet just did an internet thing. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. So, how shall we do this? Shall I go through the... So I'm going to talk about 8 companies, 5 of whom I'm meeting. I'm going to call them companies by their letters. I'm not going to reveal names. We're going to issue some degree of anonymity to be professional about it, because whilst I want to share information, there's some things that I probably shouldn't share, or because that would be... And
obviously.
should I start and then you go after?
Yeah, you start. Go ahead, Beth.
Okay, let's start by saying there's 3 companies that I applied to and didn't get a response from. That sounds like quite a small number, considering I've got 5 meetings, but in truth, those are all the companies that I basically went through the forms. And these were the companies that I was thinking, okay, I've not got any pre-existing relationship with them. This was maybe a month ago. I went through the forms. I, wrote a message. I talked about the games that I felt would be a best fit. I feel like I did everything right. And I said, it would be great to have a meeting at Essen. And this is me. And I am a published designer. I've already made Yogi, which, of course, I'm going to leverage that advantage to say, yes, I know how to work with other publishers. And yeah, nothing. For 2 of them, it was through the forums. For 1 of them, it was an email that was given from someone else. Questions?
So I'm thinking, let's backtrack a bit. Where were these forms? Were these forms that they had on their websites?
Exactly.
Did they all have the same form, or did they have different versions?
So I'm at the point where I'm thinking, I believe my games are good enough to be published, a lot of them. And I'm thinking that I would ideally like to go to the bigger publishers before I start really approaching the smaller publishers. Like, I mean, Peter Hazelwood of Board Games Hub, much as I love them, I'd get more sales and get more financial reward by, for example, going through Shigamic again. But of course, if the biggest companies say, no, we don't want that, then at that point, so I decided, okay, looking at the publishers, which ones are my games best suited for? Which ones am I most likely to get that interest thing? Going to their website, and then sometimes there's a little tab that says, inventors, look here, or game designers, look here, or contact us, and it'll tell you to... Actually, no, there were actually 4 people that I contacted. So again, 1 of them was just saying, if you're a game inventor, step 1, is your game a good fit for us? Make sure you've looked at our stuff. And then this one didn't even give you a form. It was literally just... there's
the email address. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I emailed them. Other company, I was given an email address from someone who said, hey, I've worked with this person, they're really cool, and they might be a good fit for your games. And so I got in touch with them. That was a little bit recently, so I understand them not getting back to me. It was within the past 10 days. It was about a week ago. And the first 2 companies were, I'm going to say, about 4 weeks ago. So it's a bit disappointing that I never got any reply, to be honest. I will probably go by the booth and ask if I can get an email to reach out to them in advance of Nuremberg, because that's what I'm planning. Like, all these things, it's about setting up that long-term relationship to some degree. And interestingly, I will say, so that's A, B, C, D, and Company E, who I already had a relationship with, I went through their form and I got nothing. But then, just to illustrate the fact that it's all about the relationships that you have, about a week ago, they sent an email to me, along with presumably anyone else who they've ever had a meeting with, and said, hey, if you were interested in any new designs that you might have, and so please check this thing and fill out book a thing here. So it wasn't as if I got any human response, but was just booking a thing there. And yeah, so that works out fine. And let's A, B, C, D. Let's call that company E. And I am meeting company E at 9 a.m. on Friday, so that's exciting. Good morning, Alex. I hope that you're generally well. So,
Hello.
let me actually look at my thing.
So that sounds like there's a lot of sort of, there's a lot of taking the initiative, looking through and going, okay, which companies are going to be a good fit, which games
That's the
have
key
I got?
thing.
Yeah, that it's matching them up in your mind. Now, of course, you're not necessarily going to be right about that, because they might say, oh, actually, we used to publish games like this, but we've been thinking more about taking the company in this direction, and you wouldn't know that, obviously.
I mean, believe it or not, I was told from like a very big mass market company that said to me, actually, all these 6 games that we borrowed from you, we've decided we want something with a little bit more strategy in there, which I was quite surprised by, because I thought of them as they make party games and are well known for like the simplest possible things. And so I thought, oh, okay, maybe they would actually like a game about the last 2 games that I did, a game about stuffing balloons as a team without talking about it. It's a card game, there are no actual balloons, or a game about selecting 7 cards, speedily searching for synergies. And at that point, let's carry on through the things, because again, a lot of this is not reproducible. I did make a post on the designers Facebook group. I actually got one person reaching out to me. So this is a person that I'd talked to online, and I'd met in person at a convention before. I didn't have anything for them at their previous company, but now people change companies, and if you get to know people, people from one company go to another. And because we'd had some pleasant conversations, or because I guess they were aware that I'm making games that are worth publishing, fingers crossed, they reached out to me and said, hey, actually, let me know what you're working on. And I sent them a quick sheet where I'm not going to say descriptions. I've got the names of some games and descriptions for a couple other games which don't have ridiculously long titles. And yes, this is me admitting that the titles are ridiculously long, and I'm not going to change that. And then a quick player count, minute, and a explanation of the sorts of moods that the game facilitates. And they said, oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah, let's arrange a meeting for this sort of time. And we had a quick back and forth, and now it's in my calendar. Similarly, someone else that, again, I was friends with on Facebook, and we'd actually done some trades as designers, and I'd met them at Essen 2016, possibly, and 17 and 18 and 19. And again, it's a very slow, long-term build, and I understand not everyone has the time for that. Not everyone has the ability to survive and wait so long and go to all these things and have those conversations. But it was because we'd talked on Board Game Geek, then in real life, and then we're like, oh, I'm actually doing, yeah. And those are my 3 meetings for Thursday. And then my meeting on Friday, I'm super excited about. And again, when I go back to how I met these people, that was at Nuremberg 2020. I'd met them again by happenstance. I think it was maybe 2016, UK Games Expo 2016 or 2017, and we met when I was doing something at the Playtest UK table, so I guess it must have been 2015 in fact, because I wouldn't have been, or maybe 2017, I can't remember. It was, the point is, we met again at Nuremberg, coming back from Nuremberg to London, and I was like, oh, hello, how are you? And then we got chatting. And that's the key thing. Like, don't be a jerk. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to chat to you because you're a person who can sign my game up. But if you are a friendly person, if you can do those conversations, then it's after that they said, oh, by the way, I don't normally do this, but I'm adding you on Facebook, and yeah, if you've got something to pitch at UK Games Expo, let me know. And I was due to pitch to them at UK Games Expo 2020, which didn't quite happen. So that's how I got a meeting after the pandemic's all done. And so it's kind of, yeah, I know, yeah. And
what did you do to keep that relationship alive? Because that's quite a long gap, and I know that the pandemic, did kind of change everything, obviously, but it feels
that's an interesting question.
Because so personally, I think I've got sort of like a litter of people I haven't replied to on email behind me, and I'm thinking, oh, actually, how do people keep relationships alive?
I am actually just skimming through, and I see that we chatted in 2020 and in 2022, and so that was it. I don't think you need
Never
to
too
force
late
it.
then. Clearly, well, not quite never too late, but I think actually, there probably is something about, that, maybe some of the people who I was chatting to a couple of years ago, maybe I should just reach out and say, "Hi, how are you? It's been 2
Absolutely,
years.
because
Never mind."
if they kind of asked you something or said, hey, can you do this, and you don't reply, then that feels like a bit of, it's not great. But you can always apologize for that. I mean, it's been a difficult couple of years. And I think that having a relationship doesn't mean you need to have like personal chats every month or necessarily even every year if it's like a really weird year going on. And I think that, reaching out and saying, hey, we chatted this time. Like, if you are, I guess I do try to be somewhat memorable. And, the red thing, it probably does work to my advantage because it started off, it was just when I was going out to give my game to people. But the fact that I am totally red, it probably means that I'm a little bit more memorable. I might stick in their mind. But
You
also
are very memorable, Bez. You are very memorable.
Visually, but it's also about the games, like about how you pitch, how you present. And if you are, kind and you treat people with kindness, then I think that works in, like, it's good to just have establish that relationship as a relationship where there is a bit of kindness and understanding.
No, I can see that. And I think, so one of the things that I keep thinking, oh, I should do something like this. And then it comes up and I think, oh, what am I doing? Is, you have a habit, I've noticed, when you get to a convention, you go and hand the other stall holders some business cards, and some stickers and things.
Not business cards. Never business cards. I never give something with my contact details
you
on
are
it.
brilliant cards. Is that right?
Exactly. Compliments cards. There's a big difference. Because one of them is about me and saying, hey, this is how to get in touch with me. One of them is about uplifting the other people. And I think that really it started like the first time I went to a convention and I was selling in a bind, and I went round and I actually, before the thing started, I interacted with the people and said, hey, let's swap this game, or would you, for some of them even, can I give you a copy of this game if you would like it? And that part of that is just kind of saying, hey, I've landed on the convention scene. I want people to know about this game. I believe that this is a great game. Back then it was called In a Bind. Now it's known as Yogi, just to say, if you're wanting to buy it, look up Yogi. But I still believe it's a great game, and if some people are never going to enjoy it, some people don't enjoy physical silliness, and I don't know if it was the right thing to necessarily do that, but at this point, it's like, yeah, it's a thing. It's kind of a way to say, hey, I'm here, you're here, we're both exhibitors, let's both have a good time. And I think it's
Yeah.
important to have that camaraderie. I don't think that's ever, well, that itself hasn't led to anything, because the people that I'm doing that with, they're usually not in a position to necessarily publish my stuff. I mean, at UK Games Expo, it's a minority of publishers that will be like, yeah, they're doing well, and I'd love them to publish my stuff. The majority of people, let's be honest, are people who are focused on self-publishing their own stuff, and they definitely don't want to get into it for other people. They want to just
true. But they do, but there is a benefit, there's definitely a benefit to talking to other people, so, so it really helps, because you start building relationships, you have an idea about what other people are doing in the industry, and you bounce ideas off of them. Being able to talk to people, because let's face it, we're all, well, for those of us who are self-publishing, then most of them feel more like colleagues than competitors. They're kind of, or slightly competitive. They're colleagues from a different department in a big organization, and and you might be competing over the same bit of budget or whatever, but you're not real competitors, because most of you are making such different things.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a benefit. I mean, Alex says being friendly and taking an interest goes a long way. And the truth is, if I'm there as an exhibitor, I'm not able to spend a minute with everyone, because if let's say there's 200 exhibitors in a place, and I spend a minute with each of them, that's over 3 hours, which probably I don't have 3 hours over the weekend to. When I'm running my own stall, I think that for UK Games Expo 2022, I was probably away from my, like, in the mornings, I had like my run, I had my trainers on, I was kind of running up and down trying to whip out all these things. And then that's about as much time as I can spare. That's only 3.5 hours, isn't it? 3 hours, 20 minutes if you want. But the point
Trust
is,
Alex to come up with the figures.
I was probably away from my stand for about 1 hour in total, and that time was very specifically for me to have a break. And yeah, what am I assume that this is a joke. What am I doing all that time? I'm running demos of my own stuff. I'm making sure that other people are running good demos of my stuff. I'm supporting the volunteers. I'm helping them hand out things to people who are passing by. I'm talking to media folk who are coming by. That's what I try to do at a convention. And then maybe yeah, you're right. That kind of, can I do something differently? Maybe having a sticker, or maybe, I think that it's important when you pitch games, you know who it's for, and that's level one, isn't it? But it is also about as kind of establishing these things. And Meeting 5 that I've got came about purely by being on a Facebook group where someone actually says, hey, designers, if you want to pitch with us, we've got some meetings available. And I looked and I said, yes, that is a publisher that I would like to print my games. And apparently they're going for party games. I've got party games. Well,
Yay!
I made a meeting. I told them, oh, I'm also direct messaging you the catalogue of my recent games. So I sent that over on Facebook Messenger. And yeah, I think that just, even though we weren't Facebook friends or anything beforehand, and I'm not sure if I've ever seen this person in real life, kind of being in a few different Facebook groups is definitely going to help, I guess. And so that was the one that anyone could have done, and anyone in that Facebook group, if you're going to Essen, yeah, be part of that, part of Board Game Designers Guild, and like that's a really big thing. which is currently run partially by Senfin Gloom and Joel Columba, I want to say. But anyway, those are my meetings. And are there any questions that anyone has, or you have, Jess, before you talk about your relationship?
No, I think I managed to ask most of the questions while you were going along. But I mean, that sounds. Yeah, I think for just listening to you talk about that, I think the main thing I'm coming away with is that a lot of it is the work at the beginning to sort of to make sure that you are that you're matching up the right publisher with the right one of your games, as it were.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if
Mm.
I were to pitch any of my busy bargain bags to Avalon Hill, that would be
Mhm.
clearly a terrible idea because even though,
'Cause they do big games.
yeah, I mean, that's a ridiculous example, but also
Mm.
it goes to, okay, maybe someone's doing cards games or doing family games or maybe even doing
Mhm.
children's games, but they specifically don't want certain, maybe they only want games that are cards games with another little bit. And
Mhm.
you have to make that little bit actually meaningful. You can't just say, oh, well, here's a start player marker. That's ridiculous. And you've got to listen to them. You've got to see what they actually want. And
Yeah.
normally, basically look at the information on their website. Because if it's not on their website, then you can't be faulted for not knowing, but you assume that what they're going to come up with is in the wheelhouse of previous efforts. If they've got a
Mhm.
catalogue, it would behoove you to look at least their latest 5, 10 titles, I don't know. And so you
Mhm.
get to idea of, okay, that's before you say, okay, now I'm approaching you. This is a good because it kind of I see you've done another cards game, and I see you've done speed games in the past, and this is but it's got a twist, which is why it's different, which is why it's got to be similar enough to their catalogue
Mhm.
that fits in with the audience that they've already cultivated, but also different enough that it's worth having. Oh dear.
Hello, am I back? Oh, I don't know if it's me or not. I think I'm just me. Oh dear. It might not be me, it might be Bez as well. Anyway, so choppy, says Alex. It's gone all choppy. So what we have is we've got the internet coming in waves. Jess is streaming in fine. That's really bizarre. I thought it was yeah. Anyway, I think
Hey, I'm
Bez
back.
was hello. Bez is back, and Bez is no longer riding on the choppy waves of a sea of internetness.
Yes, so yeah,
A
there's something very
stream of
wrong with my
internetness.
laptop.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
on the thing, Alex says, on a recent episode of Think Like a Game Designer, John D. Clare said that when John was starting out, they got more email responses when ignoring the submission guidelines. That's a really interesting thing.
I think that depends on whether the people who are submitting the guideline, making the guidelines, whether they know what they really want. You find that so you find that when you're recruiting people, that some organizations know exactly what the job is and they know, the type of person they want. Then there are some other organizations who perhaps it's a new role or they're just not very experienced at recruiting, and they sort of, they get halfway through the recruitment process and then they see somebody else come in, they see some applications come in and they think, oh, we got the balance wrong. We don't want someone who could mainly do A but does a bit of B. We want someone who can mainly do B but is a bit of A, and that, so sometimes people just don't know what they want when they're putting it
Yeah, I
down.
think I'd rather not go based on second-hand information right now. And like Bodhi Analyte apparently also just listened to the episode and says, I felt like his point was more that instead of filling in the forms, he sent a snappy video quickly showing the game, which seems more effective. And so, like, whilst I would be interested to chat to them, I think that that's the thing. What works for me, what works for Jess, might not work for you. And that's all I'm doing today, is sharing some of the stories of how I got stuff.
Yeah.
And Jess,
different designers, different publishers, what works one time may not work another time. Perhaps it's just being alert to all of the different ways that people can do things. That's probably the way through.
So shall we restart the alphabet? And I think you've got Company A that you mentioned this morning you're actually already working with, and you got talking to them on Twitter.
Yeah, so Company A, so I actually have 2 games with them. I mean, so I mainly got talking to them on Twitter because they were interested with one of the other games that I'd done before. So the first game I did was Disarm the Base, and they were interested in doing a second version of it. So we talked and we've got that done, and we're currently combing through the rule book, because we made a few changes. It's a slightly updated version. It's there aren't that many changes, but we thought let's put in some changes. So this is a slightly different version, and they are.
Is it because you feel like you have to make changes, or is it because you've got the opportunity to re-examine it?
We talked about it. And I think it's more that I got the opportunity to re-examine it. The original game is very, very thinky and very, well, if I want to do this, then someone else has to do that, and then someone needs to do that. And there is more capacity for an alpha player to come in and take over, which some people don't like in cooperative games. Personally, that's one of the things, the alpha player syndrome. Some people have a real problem with it and some people don't, and I think it depends on the type of people who are in your gaming group. I mean, yeah. So we were thinking, how can we make it slightly more gateway, slightly less long-term strategic, and also taking away something of the alpha playerness. And so, we've tweaked a bit of it. But anyway, they're releasing that. But then there's a second game that I'm doing from scratch for them, which I'm in the middle of creating. I was sort of in the middle of creating it in about March, when Library Labyrinth suddenly, well, of course we had the Kickstarter for Library consumed me. We had the Kickstarter for Library Labyrinth, and then getting all the artwork and the project management, and now I've and I did continue to do some more things with this other game throughout that time, but now Library Labyrinth has actually been sent off to the printers. Hurrah! Then I've gone back to this game, and I'm trying some new things in there because it had originally started out like a co-op worker placement, and that just didn't work, and so it's more of a cooperative card game now. Because the thing is, exactly like the comment there from Bodhi, exactly that it is, that sometimes you can have really bad experiences, with alpha players who just basically play the game for you, and that's really annoying when that happens. So I've moved away from the worker placement, and I'm making it more of a traditional co-op, but with definitely things where people need to do their own things rather than
that
just being
all
told what to do.
sounds really exciting, But it feels like you've really skimmed over how that conversation started.
I know. How did it start?
Was it
So
because they were entranced by your existing output of Disarm the Base?
yes. So it was because they were looking for new, they were specifically looking for new games. They liked Disarm the Base. They wanted to do that, and then we were
And
talking about
the
other things,
first
and
ever
it came out
message,
of that.
was it you reaching out to them to make them aware of Disarm the Base?
It was some conversations on Twitter, and I think it was probably some public replying
Okay.
to on Twitter, and then I think I think they then had something where they said, "Hey, we're looking for new games." And then I think I sent them a message to say, "Oh, I'm really interested in this. Can we talk later? I've got an idea, but it isn't a finished game." And this was actually not Disarm the
Mm-mm.
Base, but the other game. And then they
Yep.
came back and said, "Oh, can we have Disarm the Base, to republish that? And can we also talk about this new idea?" So I think there wasn't a form to fill in. It was in fact, it was all done through Twitter messages. And so it felt like that kind of it yeah, I kind of fell into it without knowing what I was doing, which is a
Well,
bit
it was still you
strange.
kind of
Mm,
seeing that kind of casual solicitation and
mm.
jumping on it and saying, hey, actually, how about this?
Absolutely. It was really casual, which I think makes a makes it quite difficult sometimes, to then look back and go, "Oh, how did that happen?" Whereas when
Mm-mm-mm.
you know that you've, filled in a form and what's happened. So, for example, there have been, the other conversations I've had with people about games, different games, have been when I have pitched through one of the big publishers, and I've pitched to two big publishers, publisher B and publisher C, both of which are huge publishers. They haven't taken me up on any of those offers, but I've had, pitches where they've given me advice. And in fact, in both cases, they've asked for a sample of the game, and I've sent them, because these have both been quite small card
Mm-mm-mm.
games, and I've sent them one was card games, the other was the role and color, and they've looked at them and they've said, we like the idea, but it's not quite for us. And both of those, the process of going through that was that they announced publicly on social media, we are going to have a speed pitching, we're going to have
Mm-mm.
speed pitching events. You then fill out a Google form, with the details. You upload a little video, and then, and they then pick the ones they'd like to see. Now, in both
That
those
sounds really
cases,
solid. So it sounds
mm,
like all three of these things are from you kind of figuratively putting your ear to the ground
mm,
and following on social media, Twitter or whatever it was for B and C. I mean,
mm.
it was Twitter for A and then B and C. However, you saw that, and then you jumped on that opportunity.
Yeah. The thing I haven't done, which I think is what you've done for Essen, is the kind of speculative email or speculative,
Mm.
filling out the form. So, with publisher A, which is a small publisher, then it was a casual conversation. And, it felt as though we were quite friendly on Twitter before. I've never met them because they're in a different country.
And let me
Yeah.
repeat that the two people that I filled out the form for and the
Mhm.
like two emails that I sent out, I don't know if anything came out of them because even though one of those emails I got an email coming back, I don't think that was a result of me having sent that email, if you know what I mean.
Oh, okay.
It was just a result of, hey, you're one of the many people we've worked with before and we're interested in you. We've got you on a general mailing list
Mm,
and we're going to email everyone 10 days before Essen and 10 days before literally every event because I get emails from company, I can't
mm,
remember, well, from the first company that I'm seeing at 9 a.m.
mhm.
on Thursday. I get emails from them about other
Mm,
conventions that I couldn't possibly go to if you know where
yeah,
I live, and
yeah,
but I don't expect them to
yeah.
kind
So are
of
they one of the really big companies? You know,
like
mediums. You know,
not
this is the
like
thing.
yes, I would
There's
say yeah,
such a
really big.
range, isn't there?
I mean, like I would expect them to do 10,000 plus as a initial print run.
Yeah, yeah,
So fairly big in that, yeah, they're not the biggest company in the world, but yeah, basically, who is the biggest company in the world? There's such a jump from Hasbro to everyone
yeah.
else.
Yeah, if we're talking about, if we're talking about, games companies, you've got the really big ones, and you've got
It's and
Hasbro,
like
and
Mattel.
have you still got? You still haven't got Wellingtons up there. They're not a big one anymore, are they? Do they
Um,
even exist?
Not that
Yeah,
like even though Paul Lemond and all these other companies they might be big in the UK and Gibson's is a fairly big thing in the UK. It's not
yeah.
like
They're
the
not a yeah.
Asmodee group is a fraction of the size of Hasbro,
Mm,
and any other company is going to be. I mean, obviously, with Hachette banding together now, that's also a conglomerate. But
yeah,
when we talk about scale, it's just all difficult
it
to
is.
say. And I'm going to say yes, they're a big company. Oh, did you mean Waddingtons? Yeah, I believe that
Oh,
is what
that
Jess
might have
meant.
been what I meant. Yes,
But
sorry.
yeah,
Brain and tongue not synchronized. Clearly
but
this morning.
yeah, it feels like everything for us both, social media and it has actually been better than filling in forms, which is interesting.
Mm,
And it doesn't mean that do this and it's just like if you calculate the numbers of hours, like the thousands of hours that I've spent on social media,
mhm,
it's probably really efficient if my only objective was to get these pitches. But conversely, I do get some small enjoyment from being there. I do actually feel like a lot of the conversations on these channels, I find invigorating or I find good in
mhm.
terms of inspiration. And so it's almost a byproduct at which point it makes sense. Because if I wasn't getting anything from it, yeah, let's be honest, like sending off like 4 emails and forms is not that many. Like I could have started 2 months ago and been more organized about it and sent off 20 emails and forms or 40.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
then I probably would have gotten more answers. But I do think that one key thing is to think about your existing, yeah, relationships. And at least that's what's benefiting me. It doesn't mean that's what's going to work for you, but it's what's working for me.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I
you
can see that.
talked about Company A seems to have had a lot of success, and hopefully we'll hear more about that once everything's been signed
Yeah.
and there's stuff due to be released. Companies B and C for you, they've not quite worked out. Is there a Company D or so forth?
Not at the moment, and this I think is one of the things, because I've been so focused on Library Labyrinth, which we are
Mm-mm.
self-publishing, then I haven't really thought about that. Now, you remember I do have the roll and color things, and I do
Mm-mm.
want to find a different publisher for that. So I've self-published some booklets and we were selling some, but I know, the enjoyment I get out of self-publishing is not nearly as much as the enjoyment I get out of designing. And I don't
Mm-mm.
really enjoy the process of selling a huge number of things. So I am actually looking to see whether there is a significantly bigger publisher who would be interested, to do some of the roll and colors, for example. That's one thing. And then there are a few other things. Ah, thank you, Alex. And I think there's probably something there. And so one of the publishers, publisher C, I think, said it wasn't for them, but they felt that another organization, another company might be interested in it. They didn't have any suggestions for companies, but they said actually, this is something that someone else probably would be interested in. So I
So
want to go and
is
have a look at companies. Now, I don't know if this is Bez that is frozen or me, but never mind. I think what I'm going to... Oh, Bez is back. Hurrah!
Oh, it was me. Sorry
It
about
was
that.
you. No, that's okay. Probably. Yeah. So I need to have a really good think about, how to, about how to approach, who to approach. I'd probably just, go through a list of publishers and sort of say, yeah, okay, who is out there, who might be suitable, because it's a slightly different sort of roll and write than normal, obviously.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think we probably should call it there. If anyone else has any more questions, then feel free to go ahead. I do want to acknowledge this comment before we finish up from Alex, who says,
Oh, yeah.
I've tried to curb my alpha instincts over the years. I love engaging with game puzzles and tend to get a bit over enthusiastic with the strategic chat. Now I'm much more mindful of everyone at the table being engaged with the puzzle rather than purely beating it. And Bodhi says some people just suit certain games more, nothing to be too hard on yourself about. Like, I don't think Alex was beating themselves up, but I think that myself as well. When we were playing Pandemic Legacy, I tried to make a big point of asking everyone else what they felt first. Honestly, at the table, there were like Chris and McCall were playing one character. So at the table, we had two people who I would say were potentially alpha gamers, myself and someone else, and three people who were not. Of those three people, two of them kind of wanted to go through the thinking. One of them was quite happy just to be told what to do sometimes. But I think it's really important to say, hey, what does everyone else think? If you've got a strong idea, you might say, oh, I've got an idea, but do you want to say what you want to do first? And allow space for everyone to discuss, because that discussion is fundamentally the game.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. And this might be partly why I am... so I'm not quite dismissive of the alpha gamer problem, but it might be that the alpha gamers I have encountered have tended to be very considerate alpha gamers and have also tended to be... So I really like it when you've got a table full of alpha gamers or people who are arguing about it. I mean, I like a cooperative game which results in proper debate. Now, that's not the same as argument. I don't want fighting. But remember that I work in politics, and so, so I actively like that back and forth and cut and thrust, and, so I'm actually seeking that out. And so I might be looking for an experience which is different to the average experience.
But I think that someone, oh, I can't remember which designer it was, coined the term solitaire by committee, saying that, yes, these are games that you could play solitaire, but it's a committee, and that doesn't make it a bad thing. It means that the committee...
solitaire by committee. I love solitaire by committee games.
By changing it into a game which is not solitaire by committee, which is, for example, cooperative but with limited communication, or cooperative but you've got limited time. I mean, limited time can actually exacerbate the alpha gamer problem, because then I don't get the choice to say, well, let's hear what you've got to say first, even though I'm 90% sure I'm right. And then if you say the same thing, then I'll be like, okay, let's go with that. And if you say something completely differently, I might, be saying, and so sure, you can do things people talk about. Oh, there's a hidden traitor, obviously that fixes it, but then it totally changes the game. And if the game is about that limited communication, again, that's maybe not what people who want that discussion and debate actually want. Because in Daybreak, so it's on Kickstarter right now, I played it, and the truth is I was telling... I don't want to say this out of context, but Daybreak made me, during the game, it's really empowering. You can solve climate change, and then the next day I was like, yeah, but I can't really do that. The only thing I can do is try and encourage people to vote for better government, which I kind of try to do anyway, I guess. But
which takes an awful lot of effort and energy, and let's not even go into there. My slight despair at the moment, but never mind.
and so it did kind of lead me to exacerbate my feeling of dissatisfaction and sadness and kind of what the heck am I meant to do here? But
Yeah.
no, anyway, so Daybreak as a game, theme aside, it is a really good game. I mean, for the theme, I think it's about as good as you can get. But for the actual game, it is really good. It's got the complexity of approaching Spirit Island, where everyone has to be focusing on their own area, but then there's a little bit of interaction where I might say, okay, I can get you the green energy. I'm going to do person as China. I'm going to build the green energy and give it to you. And, oh, maybe I should do this. And actually, the interesting thing is that when you've got that second person to say, oh, how about this? How about that? As long as you're giving each other space, for small parts of the game, someone arrived late. I kind of explained to them what was going on, and then and they joined my team, and then they were going to take over the USA because at some point the player playing USA had to leave. And so I kind of talked them through everything, and I tried to give them space to make decisions. A lot of it, I would say, okay, I think I definitely want to do this, but these bits I'm not too sure about. And what do you think we should do? Because genuinely, there are so many details that you can't be sure about everything. And actually having multiple people looking at one area, that for me led to really interesting discussion. Because when it was back to one person in charge of each country, it was a case of, well, I'm not going to tell you everything that's going on here because it's too much, and then we can't have that debate. There's kind of the overall debate of what cards do we have, but then there's almost these extra motivations that you could be aware of if you had the brain power to look at literally everyone's stuff, but probably don't. But anyway, I don't really have a point there.
That just sounds difficult.
Alex says, I've had some great games of Blacks and Ats as a co-op. It's really thinky, really suits multiple people spending brain power on it. And yeah, sometimes the person didn't manage to act on the information as quickly as they'd hoped. So yeah, if at this point, I think, do we have a question of the day? Jess, what is the question of the day? Question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. Question of the day.
Oh, well, we have been talking about a lot of co-op games. I wonder if we should continue in that theme, or whether we should go back to the, to the idea
Main
about,
topic,
how
or we could do something completely irrelevant. Like, I actually have one. If you don't have one, my question is, how do you record your dates? Do you do it all digitally? Do you do it all on a calendar? Like I've got, I'm willing to say, I'm not saying I endorse them because I'm sure that like Windows machines and Android machines and all sorts of things are great. But I've got an iPhone and an iMac which sync together. And the nice thing is that with the calendars, I can then I can just put theoretically infinite things in there. And I just use the basic calendar app, which then means that for me, it's like have a alarm 30 minutes before if it's important and at the 5 minutes before.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you showing there? Oh,
That's
also
the iPad.
do the same.
Exactly the same thing. So this is
Does
the
that
iPad.
sync with your computer?
So it syncs with my phone. I don't have any sort of calendar or diary thing which I keep on the desktop. That is pretty much only for pretty much only for Microsoft Office and Tabletop Simulator, and some things online. So I'm doing this on the desktop right now, but the desktop is actually not really used for very much, except things which either need a large screen, or possibly which just need a bit more power. Most things are done on the iPad, actually. I've got an iPad, and that's where most things happen.
So I'm curious if anyone out there still uses paper calendars, or does everyone use electronic calendars? Whoops, that was a mistake because I am on the phone.
So I stopped using a paper calendar in about 2010, maybe.
For me, it was a lot later. It was definitely I want to say within the past 7 years or so.
Yeah.
And
saying that, I do have a big wall calendar. We have a wall calendar on the wall, which has, which has some of these things on it as well. So the wall calendar says things like when either of us are going to be in London for the day, when we're away overnight, when we've got relatives meeting, and those things also come into the to my desk calendar, but they don't have, individual meetings in it, as it were.
I think that, yeah, Bodhi uses a similar system. Google Calendar for general stuff, and then a big desk calendar for major dates. Xate has a Google Calendar theoretically, and also a little book that Xate will theoretically look in. So it sounds like there's probably not so much organization there. In reality, there hasn't been any reason to look at the calendar for 2 years. Alex says, still using a wall calendar for family coordination. That's an interesting one. I know
that's it here as well. It's things like, well, actually, next to the wall calendar, because we have small children as well. We've got a bit of paper with lots of little with lots of names, sort of, blue tack to it, and so we move around. Who's picking the kids up from school, who's taking them swimming, that sort of thing.
Okay. I know that, yeah, some couples like to just share a Google Calendar, which works for them. And
we haven't managed to do that.
I've got my own public calendar, it started off as being for my streams, where I felt rather than make it all private, and when I started arranging guests to come on, it was much easier for me to say, hey, go there and you can see which dates I'm free. But then I started having actual real life meetings so if you go to my public calendar, you can see when I'm in Essen, or when I am. That includes traveling at Essen, by the way. Monday, Tuesday, I might not actually be in the halls. Wednesday, I should be. And you can also see when my next Kickstarter is, and when I'm going to KCON, and what's after that. Nottingham Protospiel. Oh, I'm going to Nottingham Protospiel the day after my Kickstarter finishes. And yeah,
cool.
other conventions
You'll be hyped.
that I'm happy to make
You
public.
will be running on air at that point.
But yeah, that's an interesting wee thing. Thanks for everyone letting us know. And if you're watching this video after the fact, also comment. And I will always try to reply to all the comments on YouTube or whatever. All the respectful comments, I should say. There are a small minority that I just delete because some people are jerks. Over to you. What are you up to? You can share thoughts on if you want to. I need to get a ridiculous amount of art done before tomorrow, because I need to get it sent off to someone who is going to put them together for a new game that is going to be done for KCON. And yeah, that's basically what I'm doing. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to make it high quality. It's just going to be done. And that's what I'm aiming for. Sometimes done is good enough. That's the bulk of what I'm doing. What's about you? What's about everyone else? What are you doing, Jess?
I am continuing to do, some various household chores. We've got someone coming to turn the trees in the back garden, to turn them back into a hedge. There used to be a hedge, they haven't been hedged for a long time and they need to be re-hedged again. I'm not sure hedged is a real verb, but I'm making it one. Basically, they're just going to go zhub at the top and there's going to be quite a lot of tree that comes down. It's fine. The trees will be fine. They'll just, be turned back into a hedge. And apart from that, I am doing other sort of things. I've still got some bits of painting the outside of the windows to do. So DIY for me.
And Sate, if you want to make a date for Essen, I am currently free after 3:30, 4ish on Friday. So if you want to hang out potentially in the evening or whatever, is Facebook still good for you to arrange stuff? Alex says, more cutting and sticking, making a first proper tile game prototype. That sounds awesome. And so, yes, let me go back to the banners. I wish that my laptop were working so I could click these things more easily. And what comes after this? Is it? Oh, yep. We recap and wrap up before we finish up. So we talked about meetings and accessibility and how it's really nice playing games where you don't have to count. We talked about it sometimes being nice to enjoy a bit of cooking, even if it's something really simple that I wouldn't consider it cooking, but it's still got a tiny bit of creativity where it's like, yeah, I just opened a tin of something and then put frozen peas into it, but I still changed it slightly.
Cooking. Yeah.
I still felt good about it. I still felt like, hey, I've put these two things together, go me. And then in the evening, I did have some roast potatoes with the pre-prepared lasagna, so a ridiculous amount of carbs. And it would have been nicer with some more oil, maybe, but I was trying to be healthy, so I'm not sure how to make... Yeah, but they were nicely crispy. Just a tiny bit dry, to be honest. I don't know how to solve that without adding the oil, which presumably makes it unhealthy. If you want to check me out, I'm Stuff by Bez in all of the places. And as we mentioned, stuffbybez.com/streams will allow you to see not only what I'm streaming about, and tomorrow I am hopefully meeting John DeCampos, which is really exciting if they're still willing to get up at a ridiculous time, given that they live in the USA. And
that is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be getting up at 5 a.m. to come onto my show, but
you're already there. Yay!
Yeah, how would you like people to find you, Jess? And I'm sorry for not putting everything up.
No, that's fine. Come to Descent Games. So that's my Twitter handle. So come and look at Descent Games on Twitter. And that is where I usually hang out. I've been quite quiet for the last month because I've been having a bit of, everything's done, now what? But yeah, so come find me on Twitter. You can also go to descentgames.com, which is going to be updated soon. You can also go to librarylabyrinth.com, which is the most recent game. We're also on Facebook, but Twitter is the best place to find me. Always Twitter.
And please share, spread the word. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Jess, for being lovely, chatting along. Thank you, everyone in chat. To everyone, Alex, Bodie, Xate, all the people. Sorry, but even if you're lurking and you've not I appreciate you, whether you're asking questions or just being an audience. As always, it's sad, but we have to finish off. See, it says, what if we skip 769 and go straight to episode 770 just to throw us off? That wouldn't make it. No.
No sense.
The lost episode.
Oh my goodness, and then you could go back and find it later.
Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye, everyone.